Hey everyone, my name is Philip and I'm here to talk to you about your options for publishing comics. This video will help explain the 3 different avenues for getting your comic available to your readers. But before I begin, I would like to give a shout out to my friend Stephanie Cannon and her comic creating partner, Matt Knowles. At the time that I scripted and recorded this episode, they were running a Kickstarter campaign for a spin-off series called Tales from Nocturnia. At the time of this video's release, there will be 7 days for you to join their campaign and get your rewards. Last I checked, they were just about to reach their pledge goal. You can find a link in the description below to show your support, pledge, and receive some cool rewards in the process. If you're watching this episode after the Kickstarter campaign has ended, don't worry. I'll still add links to a webpage where you can purchase the comic once it has been completed. Now back to the main episode. Like I said at the start of this episode, I would like to clarify what your options are for publishing comics in this day and age. Before I do that, I'd like to explain what I mean by publishing a comic. Publishing a comic means taking a certain avenue to get a comic that you've made and or own the rights to into the hands of your readers. This can be done for pleasure or for profit. This may be a little confusing. Why didn't I just say that publishing a comic means selling it? That's because you don't have to sell your comic to publish it. In this day and age, publishing a comic can be as easy as clicking an upload button on a website or social media profile. As long as your comic is made available for an audience to read, you've essentially just published your comic. For the second part of my definition, what do I mean by pleasure or profit? Well, you don't have to be making money from your comic. You may just want people to read your work and maybe give you some feedback. If that's the case, you can simply upload your work on social media or on a website. The website you upload to can be one that you own, or it can be one like DeviantArt. And if you're hoping to be making some money directly or indirectly from publishing your comic, then you're doing it for profit. A lot of people, including myself when I first started researching comics, often think that in order to publish a comic, you need a publisher. But thanks to a wide access and availability to a reliable internet connection, web hosting providers, content management systems, and publishing services, it's easier than ever to become your own publisher and distribute your own comic for profit or pleasure. For that reason, we're seeing a lot of comic creators today independently publishing their work. And that's all fine and dandy, of course. But I did say that there were 3 options for publishing comics. So what are they? Well, there are 2 main avenues that you may want to consider. You can either publish your comic independently, meaning you're doing all the work of a publisher yourself, or you could publish your comic through a comic publishing house. If you want to publish through a publishing house, there are basically 2 types to consider. There are creator-owned publishers and publisher-owned publishers. I like to call them cops and pops. Both types of publishing houses offer a comic creator the opportunity to have their comic be published under the house's brand. What this means can vary between publishing houses. Different publishers have different things to offer comic creators. So what makes cops and pops different from each other? The difference lies in who ends up owning the rights to the intellectual property of the comic. Creator-owned publishers offer comic creators the chance to keep a varying degree of the rights over their intellectual property. Publisher-owned publishers demand that the comic creator exchange all, if not most, of the rights over the comic. Regardless, the comic creator doesn't generally get to keep the rights over the comics' intellectual property. So, essentially, you have 3 options for publishing your comic. What exactly will it mean if you are to pick any of these options? Without going into too much detail, there are 2 things that you are going to have to consider when picking between them. How much time do you want to have to work on both your skills and your comic? What rights do you want to maintain control over for your comic? For the last point, I should possibly add that maintaining control over the rights for your comic can include control over any profits earned. It's important to note that there's nothing wrong with either of these 3 publishing options. Sometimes creators may or may not want to have complete or partial ownership over their creations. If you're feeling ambitious, you may want to learn or use your business acumen to become a successful, independently published comic creator. In the end, it all depends on what it is you want to come out of your published work. In future episodes, I plan on diving deeper into each of these publishing options and explaining just what they have to offer a comic creator. So tell me, have you published your own comic yet? Did you publish your comic independently? Did you go through a creator-owned or publisher-owned publisher? Have you gotten published under a combination of the 3? Or maybe all 3? What has your experience been like? Share your answers below and the title of your comic, and I'll see you guys next time.